All right. Good evening, everyone. My name is Sergio Alati. I'm the president of the Board of Education here in Rutherford. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues over here in the Board of Education. We are going to begin this regular meeting of the Rutherford Board of Education on October 21st, 2024. We're going to ask everyone who can to please stand, face the flag for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The New Jersey Open Public Meetings Act was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meeting of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the Rutherford Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place posted on the bulletin board outside the Borough Clerk's office, mailed to the Herald, South Bergenite, and the Record newspapers, and filed with the Borough Clerk. Hard copies of the agenda are available in the meeting room, and the agenda is posted electronically on Friday before the meeting date on the district's website at www.rutherfordschools.org. Subsequent to the meeting, a video of the meeting will be uploaded to the district's website, www.rutherfordschools.org. The video link can be found by opening the Board of Education link and clicking on Public Meetings and then Videos. So board members, in your packets, there were minutes to approve from our regular meeting. Oh, yeah. First, we're going to call roll. Mr. Whitford, please. Here. All right, thank you. So we have minutes to approve from the regular meeting of September 30th, 2024. Board members, any questions or comments about those? All right, seeing none, I'll ask Mr. Whitford to please enter those. Congratulations, you've just been through the first 3 minutes of a regular Board of Education meeting. But I'm going to turn it over now to Mr. Morano, who is going to begin our annual Board of Education Awards.
I'm used to the kids, throwing a couple boos, not parents not giving me a round of applause. But all seriousness, I stand here before you today with immense pride and gratitude as we celebrate the remarkable achievements of our students. It's an honor to present the Board of Education Award to those who have maintained a GPA of 3.7 or higher with no grade lower than a B-. This award represents not just academic excellence, but also dedication, resilience, and hard work. Each of our students has demonstrated that success is not merely a result of talent, but a commitment to continuous growth and learning. Let us recognize the unwavering support from teachers, family, and the entire school community that empowers our students to reach these heights. Together, we are fostering an environment where excellence is not only encouraged, but achieved. To our award recipients, I say this: your hard work has not gone unnoticed. You are the future leaders, thinkers, and change makers of our world. Continue to strive for greatness and know that we are incredibly proud. Thank you to Mr. Hurley, our superintendent of schools, Mr. DeBarry, our assistant principal, Ms. Gagliardo, our director of guidance, and Mr. Whitford, our business administrator. Once again, congratulations to these exceptional students, and thank you to the Board of Education for recognizing and celebrating their achievements and your continued support of the Rutherford schools. At this time, I'd like to introduce the Superintendent of Schools, Mr. Jack Hurley. I don't think it's loud enough.
Unlike Mr. Morano, I didn't have to ask for applause. It's hard to follow the remarks that Mr. Morano made, because obviously I echo those remarks. But I will say that I know, speaking on behalf of the board, this is always a very special night for the Board of Education, where they get a chance to see and honor the students who epitomize what we all work for our students' success and growth and achievement. So on behalf of the board, I congratulate the students. I congratulate them for their endeavors. And again, if we looked at the resume of all these students who are beginning to file in, we'll see that they're not just students. They're student athletes, student artists, student actors, student community members, student leaders. And they take their talents and they epitomize their talent and their skill and their drive in many, many areas. For the parents and family members and grandparents and who may be here in attendance tonight, again, these are moments that I hope you cherish. We appreciate your collaboration with us in helping us to work with your sons and daughters to get to these milestones, and enjoy these moments because you're a big part of their success, maybe the major part in many ways of their success. So this night is for you as well. So again, congratulations to all the recipients who currently came in, the ones who are in, I guess, the green room waiting to come in, and congratulations to everyone, the faculty, the staff, the administration, the board, the parents, and this whole community who worked together to produce such fine students and young men and women. Enjoy the night. Congratulations. And now it's my pleasure. It's my pleasure to introduce our Director of Guidance, Ms. Jackie Gagliardo.
Thank you. Thanks for the applause. I've been known to scream on this microphone, so I hope everyone can hear me well. So it is my pleasure to give out these awards tonight to our students. We're going to start the program with the Bronze Award. It is presented to students who have achieved a 3.7 GPA with no grade lower than a B-. This award will be distributed by our principal, Mr. Morano. We ask that you hold your applause until all names are called, please. Okay, students, let's get going. Benjamin Almengor. Ryan Bake. Faster, okay. Elizabeth Bardzel. Mariah Beto. Mark Bershadsky. Kush Bogani. Charlie Bohan. Jamie Bolliger. Jaden Cabrera. Andrew Calvo. Tyler Carroll. Zoe Casal. Catrice Castillion. Donovan Charles. Marley Trorbasian. Sophia Clossy. Cameron Cole. Leo Cohn. Michaela Casenso. Gabriela Delgado. Panav Desai. Thomas Dimitrov. Deborah Debravado. Salma El Sherbini. Andrew Erickson. Ariana Eugene. Grace Farnham. Bailey Federick. Sophia Fedorko. Lila Griner. Emily Griffin. Leah Griffin. Naomi Griffith. Eva Herworth. Majed Itani. Malik Itani. Graham Jordan. Naharika Kamkalia. Sophia Laffler. Peyton Lewis, Howlin Lee, Andrew Lull, Laksha Munjakia, Lucia Marchesani, Emma Marquez, Grace Meth, Juliana Minervini, Andrew Mahler, Samantha Munera, Ariana Nelson, Anthony Nunziato, Andrew Ahoyski, Alif Naz Orhan, Dora Ozer, Meet Patel, Cato Pepito, Joseph Phillip, Juan Rojas, Vivian Skirbo, Samantha Serrano. Slow down. See, gotta get my cadence. Mahi Shah, Leah Shin, Juliet Singh, Alexander Sitars, Gregory Smith, Gabriella Sperling, Maya Stadler, Elena Struble, Molly Sullivan, Tess Sullivan, Chloe Tarifi, Nina Tavani, Alex Todorov, Karen Tortora, Fabrizio Tullio, that was good, Cami Usan, Ava Velez, Emily Villa, Savannah Vialta, Param Varani, Franklin Weiss, Lorelei White, and Madison Williams. That should conclude our Bronze Awards recipients. Thank you. Well done. All right, great job. We will move on now to the Silver Award. The Silver Award is presented to students who achieve a 3.7 or higher grade point average for 2 academic years. The Silver Awards will be handed out by Board of Ed President Dr. Sergio Alati. We kindly, once again, ask you to hold your applause until the end. All right, students. Serena Alves. Ariana Amante. Janina Barna. Keshav Barthen. Hannah Bobowitz. Devin Burgos. Christopher Burns. Andrew Choi. Matthew Chu. David Correa. Tessa Davidson. Danielle Delatorre. Vincent D'Annunzio. Kate Finan. Reina Forte. Jasmine Gadia. Akshat Gohil. Maya Gosiak. Ava Hernandez. Hir Herpara. Sarah Iorio. Joseph Keeler. Samuel Kuderna. Jaden Lopez. Yan Liu. Chase Maloney. Serene Million. Kate Metzger. Victoria Mysick. Catherine Miguel Restiro. Sophia Moran. Amira Najar. Screaming. Hannah Nishi Kawara. Thanks. Sweating. GT Pakovics. Lena Powell. Umber Patel. Eddie Raymond. Michaela Rossi. Marley Santana. Leonardo Saraceni. Blake Smith. Natalie Turner. And Ella Walsh. And that should conclude our Silver Award recipients. Thank you. Our next award is the Gold Award. The Gold Award is presented to students who achieve a 3.7 grade point average or higher for 3 academic years. Our superintendent, Mr. Hurley, will be handing out the Gold Awards. Please, once again, hold your applause until the end. We're going to go a little out of order here. First recipient, Thomas Sinkyu. Aiden Barone. Come on, Aiden. Krista Bellinger. Ava Bergman. Tata Bissick. Poppy Bimson. Morgan Bolliger. Daniela Bordoli. Alexis Capello. Zadie Castellanos. Caden Cole. Andy Concepcion. Kate Dillon. John Eustace. Juliana Galiotto. Mia Garcia. Tristan Greeley. Gianna Hernenko. Did I get it? Yes, I got it. Grayson Crocus. Sorry. Sophia Lanchipa. Madison Lewis. Larry McGregor. Sophia Mendez. Haley Moran. Angelina Neira. Kaya Noguchi. Love that. Lucy Olivo. Palak Parawit. Brandon Ramek. Nicholas Gaglione. Wesley Schlimmer. Pranav Shrithar. Oliver Tapia. Margaret Turso. Rachel Vidal. Paula Walczyk. Fiona Waller. Gianna Yanero. Bharat Yeet. Baril Yeet. I did it. I said it. I said Yeet. Jaden Yu. Mia Zicanella. And that concludes our gold awards. Thank you. And we just have a few certificates to give out from some of our colleges and universities. Mr. Morano is going to hand out those certificates to our students. The first certificate is the National Merit Scholarship Program for commended students. This award certificate is in recognition of outstanding ability and potential for academic success in college. We have two recipients, Pranav Sridhar and Jaden Yu. Come on up, guys. Mr. Morano was sleeping. Yeah, I know, you're so funny. Okay, our next certificate comes from the University of Rochester. We have 3 award recipients. The first is Bausch and Lomb Honorary Science Award. These students get a certificate as well as a medal. The Bausch and Lomb is in recognition of outstanding achievement and superior intellectual promise in the field of sciences. This award goes to Poppy Bimson. Oh, bless you. Our next award from the University of Rochester is the Frederick Douglass and Susan B. Anthony Award. This award is in recognition of outstanding commitment to social justice and dedication to continuing their unfinished life's work. The recipient of this award is Thomas Sinkyu. Poor Thomas. Our next award from the University of Rochester is the George Eastman Young Leaders Award. This is in recognition of outstanding achievement and leadership in academics. The award recipient is Gianna Hernenko. Our Xerox Award recipient is not in the audience tonight. Our next certificate comes from Rensselaer Polytechnic Institute. It's the Rensselaer Award in recognition of superlative academic achievement of young men and women and to motivate students towards careers in science, engineering, and technology. This certificate goes to Wesley Schlimmer. And our last certificates come to us from Rochester Institute of Technology in recognition of leadership, service, and achievement. Women in STEM, this award goes to Kate Dillon. For computing, Bharat Yeet. Did he come? No? Okay. Science and math, Palak Perawit. For art and design, Paula Walczyk. Yeah. And our last certificate and award of the night for Rochester Institute of Technology is Humanities and Social Sciences for Fiona Waller. Congratulations. Congratulations to all of your students. I am just going to turn the mic over to Dr. Alati once more for closing remarks. Thank you.
So as I look around, I do see some familiar faces. My daughter, Julia, graduated in the class of 2021. My son, James, was on this stage last year, had the honor from class of 2024. It doesn't just happen, getting these awards. It takes a lot of hard work and commitment and discipline. So can we give all of our student award recipients another round of applause? So congratulations. I hope you take this work ethic on beyond the doors of Rutherford High School to all the places you're going to go. We invite families now, if you'd like to take photos with your children, please feel free to do so. Remember, you don't get these moments back. But if you really want some fun and you want to come see the rest of the Board of Education meeting, we're going to be in the high school cafeteria, and we're going to take a short break, and then we'll reconvene there. Thank you, everyone, for coming. Have a good night. All right, our short break is over. I'm going to turn it over to the superintendent for the report of the superintendent.
Tonight, my report will focus on the report of student achievement. Honestly, I think after what we just witnessed, that could be the report of student achievement. But statutorily, I have to report any test scores that come through the state within 60 days of our receipt of the test scores. So I included in the packet a rather voluminous report. Just so you understand, the template is not of our making. This is the state's template that we're supposed to fill in. And within a day or two, this will be on the web, which there's a quick link to the report of student achievement. So I'm going to walk you through some of the highlights and explain to you some of the things that the report does tell us and some of the things that it does not. But before that sounds like a criticism, we get probably the same volume that this report is, 70 pages or so, on each school. We get statistics on every student. We get statistics on every standard question, because every question is aligned to a standard. We get graphs that show where we are in terms of the state average, above the standard or below the standard. So it gives us historical data that we could look at and say, it seems like every year we struggle a little bit on this one standard. So let's look at maybe why, right? The reason why none of that information can go into the report that gets presented publicly and gets posted on the web is that there's always the possibility of identifying individual students through that information. So anything where there's a possibility of identifying an individual student, we can't report publicly. You'll see even in some areas where it'll say fewer than 10 students took this test. Let's say a DLM, which is a dynamic learning map for students, special ed students who do not follow the regular curriculum. We can't report those scores if there's fewer than 10 because you don't want to potentially identify a student. But I will say that the data that we get from the state has improved greatly over the years, and it gives us a lot of detail, which is very useful. Unfortunately, some of the stuff, to be honest, in here isn't as useful, okay, because it's more aggregate and doesn't really pertain to student growth. But anyway, let me walk you through it. The first couple of pages are notable achievements, and without reading through all of them, you'll see that in just about every case, on just about every standard in ELA, we scored above the state average. There was one standard in grade 3 where we scored below. Only 2 students took that question because the tests are not identical. So there are different questions, not every standard's on every test. So I'm not too concerned about us being below the assessment with only 2 students had to answer that particular question. In math, we did just as well on the standards, where in the majority of grade levels, we scored above all the standards, except when you get to Algebra 1. And I do want to remind the board and anybody who's maybe looking in on this on the website later, that we had moved Algebra 1 to 8th grade several years ago. And students who achieved a certain level in Algebra 1 then moved on to geometry in 9th grade, and those that did not stayed with Algebra 1. And what we have found, you remember we had the committees that are still functioning on the academic areas, we found that some of the skills that were taught in the old 8th grade math were really integral to the ability of students to do well in Algebra 1. And we weren't really doing a service to kids by fast-tracking them past certain skills that they needed to do well in Algebra 1. So this year, not reflected in this test, if you recall from our reports from last year when we had Ms. Schmedding and the other supervisors and administrators here to report on the committees, we revamped our curriculum to reinstate accelerated math in grade 8, which is Algebra 1, but the majority of students now are taking 8th grade math, which means the majority of 9th graders won't be repeating a subject that they didn't do well in and maybe now, throwing their hands up on, but getting it fresh with the proper foundational skills. In addition, primarily because what we were seeing in algebra, when our math scores are great, and then all of a sudden come 7th, 8th, 9th grade, they begin to dip. We looked at a new math program, which we put in this year, in grades K to 8, the Envision program. So we are hoping that is going to show some improvement. Now, I don't expect next year's scores to just, go through the roof. It takes sometimes a year or two of a new program for the teachers to get acclimated to it, the kids and parents get acclimated to it, which is why we're doing Parent Academy on the Envision math and so on. But we do feel, and when I say we, the teachers, the math teachers, and the math supervisor who chaired the committee, that this was a step in the right direction. So that was a direct relation to a consistent pattern. This is not new that our Algebra 1 scores were not up to speed compared to the others. Then there are pages that show a comparison between the 23-24 test scores and in every subject area. I want to just make a cautionary comment on this. For the most part, what I'm going to tell you is that throughout all the data that we've looked into, we had a pretty good year on the test where we either stayed pretty flat compared to last year or we showed some improvement. It was only a couple areas where we dipped a little bit. However, if you look at this chart, you'd say, no, that's not true. We have some big gains and we have some big hits. But let me explain to you why this is a misleading chart for what the test is supposed to show. So if you look on page 4 and you look at grade 4 students who scored a 4 or a 5. Now 4 or a 5 is passing. Okay, that's not the term that we would use, but that's what it really means, right? It says that we took a 22% decline in grade 4, language arts. So if you go up to grade 3, level 5, in 23, you'll see 8.7% of the students scored level 5. If you go down to grade 4 in 2024, those same group of kids went up to 23.8% scoring a 5. So in fact, our grade 5 jumped by almost 15%. They're looking at grade level scores, which are a different group of kids. What we're looking at with the data we give us is student growth. It's irrelevant to say, wow, you did worse this year in grade 4 or you did better this year in grade 4 when it's a whole different group of kids unless you look back at what happened in grade 3. So if you went through that kind of diagonal line, you would see areas where there was significant growth. You will see a few areas where there was decline, okay? But but this chart is misleading. It's speaking about a whole different group of kids and how they did. So we look at the data that I can't share by the state rules to show growth of students, both individually and collectively. Does Does that make sense with what, and, in some areas we did show some decline with the same group of kids. The other thing is, we might have declined in level 4, but we moved up in level 5. That's a good thing, right? And when you get to levels 1 and 2, you want to decline, right? You want fewer students doing the lowest level, right? So those areas of decline is a positive. If you have a gain there, that's not such a good thing, okay? So on pages 4 and 5, which is for math, and page 6 for science, you'll see a similar type of comparison. I'm going to talk a little more about science when we get to another slide. Science scores are abysmal, okay? They have been for a long time. Science scores, even though we showed flat or a little improvement in some areas, and wait till I get to the one where the state scores. I want to talk a little more about science when we get there, okay? The next couple of slides are simply the percentages of students who take the test. The state penalizes you if you don't get like 95 or 92%, or, we're always close to 100. This is really a throwback to the days of Park, when there was a big pushback about taking tests. Very few people now opt out of tests. The dynamic of the test has changed, and so some people still do, not many. Sometimes a kid's absent, they don't make it up. Sometimes a student isn't taking the test because he may be taking that DLM I referred to, right? So as long as we're in that 98 to 100% range, you'll see geometry is lower because that's the kids who are in the honors section, and as percentage of the class is lower than, not honors, but they have done well in Algebra 1, so is percentage of the class, okay? We then get to language arts, where there's a couple of pages that show our scores compared to the state level. So for example, in 2024, third graders in the state, 19.8% scored level 1, which means they're not meeting expectations for a grade 3 student. In our district, we had 4%. So again, those are very healthy numbers. When you look at the other end of it, in the state, 37% of grade 3 students had exceeding expectations, which is, that's meeting. Let me go to exceeding. 6% had exceeding expectations. We had 8%. So, the areas that we want to be in levels 4 and 5, we want to be above the state, and just about universally, except for Algebra 1 and science, we are. On levels 1 and 2, we want to be below, and we are, and sometimes by large amounts, and most time by large amounts. Most of the states at level 1 in double digits, and level 2, and we're for the most part in single digits on all of them. But I'll tell you that, as an accomplishment, I've said this before. I expect us to be doing better than the state. I expect us to be doing significantly better than the state. I'm very proud of what we do academically. And there are a lot of areas in the state that have a lot of issues with socioeconomic conditions, overcrowded conditions, no parental support conditions, and they are some of our biggest areas of population. So we should be doing better than the state. But that doesn't take away from the fact that we are. It's still something to, to celebrate. Then following our ELA interventions, I want to give you a quick explanation. I know you've heard this before. And I want to tell you something we're doing different. And this will be the same now I'm going to lump language arts, math, and science together. So Mr. Ursulisi for language arts, Ms. Schmenning for math and science, take all that data. We get the data like in August, early August. And it's embargoed from everybody until we get to the official release, which comes early September, and that's when the 60-day clock starts. But beginning in August, Ms. Schmedding and Mr. Ursulisi, along with the principals, begin to look at those areas where we aren't doing well, okay? And on that chart I told you about, and look at the standard and look at interventions we could do with our students to help them in those areas. And you'll see in the standards, they also tell you how many of the students were assessed. So for the most part, Like, for example, the first one, only 7 students took that test, that question. Remember, not because they skipped it, because the test is manufactured with different, not every standard's on every test. So they put time in with things that we can do, either with programs that we have, for example, IXL, or things we could do that are teacher-made, or things we could do within the curriculum to improve in those areas. I think these standards are very helpful. I mean, these interventions are very helpful, and they're a good tool for teachers to have. However, this is a mandate that has to be in the report. I have to report to you. This year we took a little different approach where we said to the teachers, we want to give you some time to do data dives into do what Mr. Ursulisi and Ms. Schmedding have done. You look at the data and you talk with your grade level teachers or your department, your peers. They're your students. What did you do last year that you could do differently? What areas, what interventions do you think you can use? What strategies can you develop? If you want to use this bag of tricks, that's fine. But why don't you come up with your own? Because I think ownership of it is a much better technique, right? Not, oh, you know, Mr. Ursulisi gave me something to do. Maybe I'll do it, maybe I won't. I'll do it, but I'm doing it because this is what he told me, instead of saying, hey, take a little time one day. So on workshop day, we had a lot of our teachers work on this data mining. In lieu of a meeting where we have PLCs, I know Pierpont has a whole team that goes into this by grade level. Union School did a similar approach. The high school works through the supervisors in the department. Washington School is taking the same approach. I know the schools are doing this, where we want the teachers to roll up their sleeves and do what the supervisors have done, because I think there's better ownership there. Okay? And then a similar for math. State comparison, which is the same thing I said before, for the most part, except when you get to Algebra 1, we're doing better where we should be doing better in all areas, you know, lower where we should be lower, higher where we should be higher, okay? And then there's strategies there for math as well. And then you jump to science, and that's on page 62. I want to mention a couple of things about science. You know, it's the only test that Pearson doesn't own, and Pearson doesn't give then the details that we get with the other tests. We don't get we don't get the report by standard in science. We don't get the same amount of information that we get in the other subjects. But here's something that we finally all, when I say we, the administrators, not just in Rutherford, around the state, administrators, supervisors, superintendents have finally woke up to. And before I say this, I want to preface it by this. I don't accept the fact that because everybody's doing bad, we should do badly too, okay? So we looked at our science. Remember last year, the committee that we had, again, Ms. Schmedding and I think Mick Saxon here talking about, we looked at, started with elementary, where we changed. We now have our science specialist going back into kindergarten, where she wasn't there for a while. We have her getting into the classroom more. We started a science fair that we got away from for a while. We're doing more science reading in even language arts, right? Because reading is reading, correct? We went with the claim evidence reasoning statements, you know, the SIRS. We started that as early as grade 2, okay? We also have revamped our course structure in the high school. And this year, the goal of that committee, which now Mr. Viola, who is now the assistant principal at Union and comes from a science teaching background, same as Ms. Saxon did, now that she's a principal, Mr. Viola is now chairing that committee. And that middle school approach is this year's project, to see what we could do in middle school with either program or sequence or structure. So we have to do better. But here's the thing. There's only 5 levels here. Level 1 and 2 for science would be the areas where you consider students as failing, okay? And I just lost my note, but, oh, here it is. No, I don't know where I went. Oh, here it is, way back here. Okay. If you look at that, in the state, approximately 70 to 75% of the students in the state who take the test, for lack of a better word, fail it every year. And this is a consistent number year after year after year. And that means in Rutherford, which we do, you know, our language arts scores are pretty good. Our math scores are pretty good. Our kids can't do science. You know, and I'm telling you, in every community, it's a very similar pattern. Nobody has really good scores. So if you're a teacher, right? I mean, Ms. Cole, you're a teacher. If every test you're giving, the kids can't do well on, after a while you start to question the assessment. You know, I mean, why is it that nobody in the state of New Jersey can do well on this test? And it's hard for me to believe that consistently 70% of the kids can't do it. So we've pushed back a little bit to say, can we take a look at the assessment and take a look at the curriculum to see if the assessment is actually mirroring what's in the state mandated curriculum? I think it's a good question. I don't know. I think my colleagues and I all didn't do well on the critical thinking assessment because we should have asked this question a few years ago, right? But it does make you wonder. So that said, we still are doing a lot in district to address science because, you know, I'd like to be the one where they say, hey, everybody in the state's not doing well except for Rutherford. Right?
Well, I have a question. So what is the state's response if you can't?
Well, you've been working in public education for a while. What do you think the state's response is? We're going to take it under advisement. We're going to look into it, and you know, they say they're going to look at it.
I mean, there's no standards that's coming back with any data.
The other thing, but the other thing is we don't get. I could point to every single question, every standard on the language arts and math test and see exactly how every one of our students did. We don't get that data with science. So it's even hard to try to figure out, you know, why. Language arts and math eventually, when the kids get to high school, are right now a graduation test. Science is not. So you get a student who sits through a couple of days of language arts testing, a couple of days of math testing, and now has to sit through a couple of days of science testing, and they know, doesn't matter, you know. So there's a lot of things that we can be doing. I think, you know, I think science, I'm a language arts guy, that's where I was, right? I think science is a key to so much right now with no matter what job you're in, no matter what your career path is. You know, I mean, I'll take the term science out, STEM, right? So maybe it's time to elevate the importance of the test to the same level as the importance of language arts and math. Because if I think something's important, I'm going to gear up for it a little more. If I think something's going to mean I'm graduating or I'm not, I'm going to gear up for it a little more. I think also it's time to, you know, we're trying very hard to change the mindset, and I think it's working, of our teachers to embrace how science can be infused into language arts classes and social studies classes and things like that in terms of reading. But I'm hoping, Christina, to your point, that the state's listening to this and they're going to look at, you know, some of the revamping of the test. I know the CUSAC, they did on the CUSAC, remember I mentioned how next year they're changing the value of certain tests, and CUSAC, it's not going to affect us this year, but next year the science weight is going to be lessened from the test scores because they're recognizing the anomaly of why science is so low, and it's negatively impacting school districts. So, you know, at least we're looking at it. Then we have the subgroups. There are no surprises in the subgroups. I mean, areas. I was pleased to see that for the most part, we have showed, again, either relatively flat or some slight gains in the where you see the comparisons by years. We had I think a pretty significant across the board gain with Hispanic students, especially at ELA, and we had some areas of gain with our special education population. A couple areas with a little decline, but minimal decline. So we were pleased with that. There's a slide on page 72 about dynamic learning maps. As I mentioned, those are students that take this in lieu of the state test because they don't follow the regular curriculum. They're usually students, either out-of-district students or in some of our special ed programs in district. It's a small number, so we don't put numbers in of how they did. This slide on page 73, the profile of the class of 2024, none of this information is new to you or new to the public. It's our graduation rate from last year. Remember, it's 97% because it's a 5-year rate, not a 4-year rate. Okay? So it changes a little bit. Some of the kids who didn't graduate on, and we have the 18 to 21 program. The colleges and 4-year, 2-year, non-college schools, like technical schools, all that information I reported back, I believe, in July. Once again, I'm very pleased with our advanced placement results. This year we had the highest number, or last year, had the highest number of tests administered, that's on page 74, 388 exams, 79% of the students scoring a 3 or higher, which means those students potentially get college credit, 173 students with 3 or higher. We had 219 students tested. And if you look on page 75, you can see over the last 5 years, we have hovered around 80% of students getting 3, 4, or 5. You'll also see how our numbers of students have been high, and now they're getting higher with more courses and with more students taking them. And the number of students 3 or higher is also growing. And as I hope you're aware, we've been on the College Board honor roll now just about every year for the last 5 years. It is a remarkable change that occurred when we didn't take away all the requirements to get into AP, but we lightened it up a great deal, opened the door to more students to take it, and instead of bringing our scores down, it raised scores up as kids accepted the challenge and moved on. And that's a very positive sign. SAT results, they no longer provide for you state averages or national averages. I can tell you the mean score of 1114 is pretty consistent with what we've done in the past and usually was above the state average. I don't know what, and the national average, I don't know what that is anymore, but I'm not overly disappointed in those scores. They're about what we've always done. We also get a relatively large number of students taking the test, and that always impacts score. The ACT, only slightly fewer than 20. 16 students took the ACT. The ACT used to be something that very few students in the East Coast and the Northeast took. Now a lot of students do take it. A lot more colleges do accept it. The average ACT score is run, we're all kind of familiar with SATs, right? 200 to 800. ACT goes 1 to 36, but the 25, they do tell you what the national average is 19.5. So our students that took it scored on the aggregate higher than the national average, okay? So I'm pleased that we've seen, we didn't see a decline. We saw some growth, some areas, some significant growth on the state test. I think it gave support to some of the changes that we are making. I think areas where we need to address and have not addressed yet or have begun to address are still crying out to be addressed. So I'm glad we're moving in that direction. I think the AP and the SAT and the ACT and those scores reflect real achievement of our students. And again, I want to remind everyone, that the state test is a one snapshot of one moment, right? It's really not the whole picture of what a student is about. However, it does provide us a lot of information that speaks to curriculum and speaks to the way we assess students and the way we address standards, and we use that information. And I do want to give credit to the supervisors and the administrators, and then the teachers for the supervisors and administrators really taking a deep dive into the data and then opening the door to the teachers to take part in that conversation to develop ways to keep doing things better. And last, I think the atlas that Jair is talking about, that curriculum model, is going to help us too, because that's going to be able to clearly have us find areas of where are standards addressed in not only curriculum but in lesson planning. What type of assessments are we giving? Things of that nature, to help us pinpoint areas of maybe deficiency in how we're presenting material or how we could do something better. Okay, so that's my report. If anybody has any comments or questions, I'll try my best to answer them. There's a lot of stuff. I may not be able to answer everything specifically, but I'll try, Mrs. Strayberg.
Is there any studies going around or any work on the test results with the pandemic?
I think overall there has been some learning loss, but when we looked, Mr. Ursulisi and Ms. Menning did kind of a 6-year study. This test, it became the test maybe right before the pandemic entered. We don't really we see a little dip, nothing tremendously noteworthy. Academically, we managed to keep our doors open. We had a computer in every kid's hands, right? I don't think we took the hit there. I think we saw a bigger dip in the executive functioning skills, social interaction, especially with young kids who, kindergarten, first, second grade, who maybe lost a lot of time. And now here they are, second grade, third grade, first time in maybe a year that they're in a full classroom. And in a full classroom where you could be closer than 6 foot near somebody and you could see their face, So I think that was a bigger impact, honestly, than even the academic side of it. But yeah, there was, to answer you, there was a dip. We didn't have, I think, a real serious one. And I don't believe that could be any reason to explain, because I can go back, even with different tests, these patterns have been somewhat consistent over time of success and needs to improve. Anything else? Okay. Once we're done with this, I have 2 other quick things to go over.
Any other questions?
Can I ask a question about the interventions? Do you get down to the student level, or is it, curriculum is modified?
No, this is like, a lot of this is IXL. You'll see a lot of IXL in here. IXL is a computer program where you can pinpoint standards and topics, and students can work either independently or with a teacher. So, almost all these interventions are to be used with students. Some of them could be how you structure a test question or how you structure a unit, but even that eventually is going to be the student involved. But to my point I made earlier, I hope the teachers are using them. I trust that they are, but we want to let the teachers say, hey, why don't you take a look at these suggestions and see if you can come up with some of your own that you think are going to be more beneficial.
Well, I appreciate that you're looking as closely at the data as you are, and that you've got these committees in place that have been kind of working on these curricular areas. So it's another data point.
Yeah. If there are no other questions, just very briefly, there's a couple of things I'll mention when I think it'd be better just mention it when we get to that segment on the CUSAC, the DPR. I'll mention something there, and the calendar and 1 or 2 other things. But I did want to mention about committees. We are, Mr. Whitford and I discussed that probably in November we'll have finance and building and ground. Now, finance will be starting the budget cycle, and that meeting in November will simply be the budget calendar. But one of the things we talked about in committee, and I think we talked about briefly at a board meeting, is trying to come to a final wrap-up, right, of referendum funds and money that may need to be utilized in an area, and money then that would then go back to offset some of the debt, right? We had met with PSA, in beginning of October, end of September. We went through and we asked them to review some of our suggestions that we made to the building and grounds for both priority and also cost, right? So that we can get some real numbers rather than guesstimates. And we're hoping, we already got some things back. We have a couple of others still in the hopper, and so we're hoping that by the middle of November to the end of November, that will be finalized. Then we can meet with Building and Grounds, first of all, to say, hey, here's what we can do. Do we want to do it, right? And then with Finance and Building and Grounds to say, here's the financial end result now of the project. I apologize a little bit that it's taken a while, but you meet with the architects, and then they want to bring in the engineers and all that kind of stuff. So nothing is as easy as it appears when Matt and I talk about it. We figure it out in our office, but then they come in and change everything around. So hopefully that will come soon. The other thing, policy, Strauss Esme has a alert that they say is forthcoming. So once we get that, I'll do what we always do. I'll send it out. If there's a need to meet, we'll meet. If there's a need to do, we could do it electronically. And then at some point, Dr. Alati, I'm sure, will be speaking to the REA negotiations, which, will probably commence in January like it usually does. So most likely in November or December, right, Dr. Alati, that group will get together. So it's between now and the end of the calendar year, Building and Grounds, Finance, and possibly policy will meet virtually or in person, and REA. So we'll have and so it might not all be on that November 25th. So what I'll do is once we get the information, I'll put it out to you nice and early and say, hey, are you available to meet at this time or this day? And we'll get. And I know it's a tough November and December are tough times with holidays and all that kind of stuff, but we'll have to get those meetings in those 2 months. Okay, and that's my report.
All right, thank you. Any questions for Mr. Early? Hearing none, we will move on to the report of the president. So just briefly, thanks to those who were able to walk the parade during homecoming. I heard it was an amazing football game. I am sad that I couldn't be there, but if you need to get scores and you need someone who's going to text message you really, really quickly, go to Mr. Bogosian. He's giving me in-the-moment scores. But it was, great day. I heard almost everyone was able to make it, so thank you for that. Just a couple of things that are in Mr. Hurley's memo, just to cite. So specifically, the Buildings and Grounds and Finance. So that's Monday, November 25th. So just mark your calendar for those meetings in the evening. And I appreciate that Mr. Hurley puts out in his memo some events that are coming up. If board members can attend those, that's always great. Just a plug for the REF Casino Night. They're re-envisioning it this year. It's going to be at the Westmount Country Club. One thing they're doing differently this year is, as opposed to having 2 signature events, which are typically Casino Night in the fall, wine tasting in the spring, they're just having 1 signature event a year, and they're going to rotate between Casino Night and wine tasting. So they're not going to have a wine tasting this year in the spring. So if you're thinking about going to one of the big events, this is the one to go to. So it's November 15th. I think that's about it for me. Any questions or comments? All right, then we are going to, I would typically open the meeting to the public, but we don't have anyone here in the public this evening, so we'll open and close the meeting at 8:09 p.m., and then we are going to move on to new business, where there is action to be taken. And we are going to start with personnel. Mrs. Cole.
Good evening. Personnel did not meet this month, and the following 14 motions are to be put forward at the recommendation of the superintendent. Number 1 is to accept the resignation of a teacher at Pierpont School. Number 2 is to approve a social studies teacher at the high school. Number 3, to approve a confidential business analysis in the business office. Number 4 is to approve a consultant in the business office. Number 5 is to approve a lunch monitor. Number 6 is to approve the following faculty member teaching 6 classes. Numbers 7, 8, 9, and 10 is to approve a disability leave with pay. Number 11 is to approve the following coaching assignments at the high school as listed. Number 12, to approve the following teachers for presentations on lesson planning and curriculum basics as listed. Number 13, to approve the following internships, clinical placement student teachers in the Rutherford Public School District as listed. And we're going to go to number 16, to approve the following travel reimbursements as listed.
All right, thank you. Questions or comments? Mr. Early, could you explain number 12, the service providers? Is that new?
Yeah, there's a mentoring program that we started. As new teachers get a mentor if they're provisionally certificated. But we started. Dr. Valechko suggested a year ago that maybe we develop a program where we get some of our teachers to mentor all new teachers in the district voluntarily. The new teachers, whether they're a first-year teacher or a fifth-year teacher, right? It was a success, and it's done strictly by the teachers. None of the administrators are involved. It was such a success that the teachers in last year's first-year program asked, hey, could we do a year 2 program? So what we're doing, those funds, right, Mr. Whitford, are for professional development, and we had the curriculum, for lack of a better word, in place for year 1. We had to develop one for year 2. So we're paying some teachers who give up their time. They don't get paid for doing the presentation, but they're getting paid to write the curriculum on their time through professional development funds. Okay? And I think it's a great idea. I mean, even if you're experienced teachers, sometimes, you come in, like, how do we do things? So I think and it's voluntary, and I'd say maybe, I'm doing this anecdotally, half of the people who were in the year 1 program wanted to do a year 2 program. So,
Got it. Thank you. Mrs. Cole, do you want to move motions 1 to 13 and 16?
Yes, I'd like to move motions 1 through 13 and 16.
All right, do we have a second? All right, Mr. Sprayberry, any last questions or comments? Hearing none, Mr. Whitford, please take roll.
Mr. Bogosian?
Yes.
Mrs. Cole?
Yes.
Mr. Healy?
Yes.
Mrs. Jones?
Yes.
Mr. Maison?
Yes.
Dr. Racine?
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry?
Yes.
Dr. Alati?
Yes.
Motion's carried.
All right, thank you. We're going to move on to curriculum and instruction. Ms. Jones.
Thank you. We did not have a CNI meeting, and tonight there are 7 motions that are put forward at the recommendation by the superintendent. NJQSA, QSAC, performance review. Do you want to speak to this now, or do you want me to just?
why don't you go through everything, then I'll speak.
We did have a meeting on October 16th, and Mr. Rowley will speak to it in a little while. 2 is revised school calendar with the addition of Monday, March 3rd, a afternoon professional day for teachers. We have 184 total for the year now. Number 3, out-of-district placements. 4 field trips, totaling 63 thus far. 5 emergency bus evacuation drills. Home instruction for 3 students. And summer enrichment academy for 2025 to include the rising 4th graders.
All right, thank you.
Okay, let me comment on 3 items. I think there's 3 items. Let's work backwards. Number 7. We've had over the last few years, we've had a summer enrichment program probably 12, 15 years. We used to call it Jump Start, and then we changed the approach. Ms. Monticello, who's one of our teachers, has been directing that for the last maybe 6 or 7 years. We've had parents over the last few years say, why can't we do one for rising 4th graders? We had CUSAC, well, ESSER money, but money, not CUSAC money, get all my acronyms wrong. ESSER money that we got through after the COVID, that we did run a 4th grade program at Pierpont for, I think, 2 years, utilizing some of that, credit recovery and loss money. And it seemed to be a smaller program than the grade 3, but one that people really liked. So we thought this year we would go with the grade 4 and house it at Pierpont, so that it's really not only academically jumping to grade 4, but it's also being in the bigger building, being in the bigger desks, that sort of thing. This is a pay for itself program, so there's no impact on budget, and we think it'll be successful. I think beyond grade 4, it will I don't see it ever expanding beyond grade 4. Kids get to grade 5. A lot of them are involved in other camps, other activities. They don't want to be at school for another month, but I think this grade 4 is a good idea. So we'll house it up here upon. And we need board approval, obviously, for a new program. Also, as Mr. Whitford and I have been working on going out to bid shortly, we'll talk about this with Building and Grounds in November, for univents at Union and at Lincoln. So there's a very good chance then that next summer, the enrichment program that's been housed at Lincoln will be at Washington next year, because Lincoln will be doing the univents. And then in the discussion with Ms. Monticello and Dr. Valechko, the thought was, maybe it's a good idea if we alternate every year. 1 year Lincoln, 1 year Washington, because then, closer to one side of town for 1 year. And also, our custodians have to do like a mad rush to get the building ready every year. So that could be in every other year where, it gets a deeper clean. So I think it's a great idea about the program. I think it's a great idea to alternate the buildings too as time goes on. But as you know, it's been a very successful program. Let's see, I said I was working backwards. I should have worked in the right order. Oh, the calendar. We mentioned this last time, the March 3rd date of a one-session day for students for professional development for some of the work we're doing on all the goals and initiatives. Last year we added 3. This year we think 1's sufficient. And we think March 3rd will be plenty of time to notify parents and the like, okay? And then CUSAC. The district performance review has to be submitted by November 12th, so that's why I had to do it for this meeting, to the state. And what this is the self-evaluation that we do of how we think we're going to score on all these areas, okay? And there are 5 areas. You have to get at least an 80% in every one, okay? So all the administrators, most of the supervisors, some of the secretaries have started working on gathering the data and the support that we need for all of this. I mean, this document, the evidence that we need is a 175-page volume. So we're looking at board agendas, policies, meeting minutes, contracts, treasurer's reports, you name it. Everything we do, we have to be able to show documentation, right? Some of it's done electronically before they come. A lot of it they want to see when they get here. So we won't get done with the documentation until probably shortly before. I asked all the administrators to get to me all the documentation by November 22nd, because I don't know when they're coming yet. They could be here as early as January 3rd. They could be here as late as early April. 6 years ago, or whatever, 9 years ago, I guess it was 9 years ago, they came on, or 6 years ago, whatever it was. We were the #1 draft choice. They were here the first day, January 4th. Okay? Then the next time they came January 25th. I did ask if they could come a little later this year, because, Mr. Ryan, that office is a big player in this, and Ms. Fargo did it many, many times. Mr. Ryan's new. Mr. Whitford did it in his previous position, but he's new here. So I thought with 2 key players new, maybe to give us a little more time. But I still want everything by November 22nd, because then I have to go through it to make sure we've hit every mark, right? So Mr. Whitford and I and Mr. Ryan sat for a couple hours one day, and we went through that 180 pages to make sure that we felt confident that we had everything that we needed so that we could then say what our score should be, right? So now we have to fill in all those spots to prove that we're right, okay? The reason why the curriculum instruction turns out to be whatever it is, 40, is because the first 7 or 8 questions of tests are all based on test scores that the state populates. So they'll put that in. I mean, last time I think we scored a 92. I think that's what it was. We're not going to get 100 there, because they look at the scores and okay. The reason why it may have looked a little different to you this time, if you remember back 3 years ago, and 3 years before that, the state already had the scores in there by now. Okay, the state, we already knew by now when they were coming to visit. Everything's coming a little slower. So you're approving that you're supporting our self-evaluation that we're going to score 100% in all the areas that we can score. And the ones we can't score, we have to wait to give what the state tells us, okay? And what we need is to submit this by November, between November 1 and November 12, we need to have a committee sign-in page, which we have. We need to have the DPR, which we have, and we need a board resolution if the board approved the submission of it. So that's what this is for, okay? So those are the items that I wanted to mention on the curriculum. If there are any questions,
Any questions?
And Mrs. Jones is on the committee, and the committee, we had, about 13 people. We had custodian, a couple of administrators, supervisors, teachers, board member, Mr. Whitford, Mr. Ryan on the committee.
All right. Ms. Jones, do you want to?
Resolutions 1 through 7 under curriculum and instruction.
All right. Do we have a second? Mr. Mazzone, any last questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Whitford, please take roll.
Mr. Bogosian.
Yes.
Mrs. Cole.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Maison.
Yes.
Dr. Racine.
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry.
Yes.
Dr. Lottie.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
All right. Thank you. We will move on now to finance. Mr. Bogosian.
We have not had a finance committee meeting since our last full board meeting. Tonight on the agenda, we have 6 motions. Number 1 is the routine approval of bills. Number 2 is the August treasurer's report. Number 3 is August budget line item transfers. Number 4 is to accept with gratitude a donation of 150 latex swimming caps from the Rutherford Swim Association to the Rutherford High School Athletics Swim Program. Number 5 is to accept with gratitude a donation of playground equipment appropriate for the preschool class at Washington School from Joanne Abate. And number 6 is to accept with gratitude a donation of 150 plus care packages promoting dental health from Dr. Shafali Pilar, Smile Today Dentistry of Rutherford.
All right. Thank you. Questions?
Can I make one comment? The last 2 or 3 meetings, I'm doing this from memory again, we've had several donations, none of which anyone solicited, so it's really very nice that the community is reaching out to, whether it be a building principal or to me or to someone to say, hey, can you use this? Can we bring it forward? I think it speaks very well to the community and also the community's appreciation for and collaboration with the district.
Absolutely. What do we do with playground equipment? Does it go into classroom or is it up to?
It actually, we didn't know what else. It was actually like for the preschool kids, so it was more like a little bus, and
Okay.
like that. So they'll put it in there.
Non-fixed equipment.
Yeah,
Movables.
exactly. All right. Mr. Bogosian, you want to move those?
I'd like to move motions 1 through 6 under finance.
All right. Do we have a second? Mr. Healy, any last questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Whitford, please take roll.
Mr. Bogosian.
Yes.
Mrs. Cole.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Maison.
Yes.
Dr. Racine.
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry.
Yes.
Dr. Lottie.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Thank you. Policy. Anything, Mr. Healy, for us?
No, we did not have a committee meeting since our last board meeting, and there are no resolutions.
All right. Thank you. We'll move on to buildings and grounds. Mr. Sprayberry.
Good evening. We did not have a buildings and ground committee. We have one motion to put forth, that is the National Superintendent. So the maintenance plan for 2024. And I'd like to say great job on it. I actually read the whole thing, went through it, so great job. Thank you.
All right. Any questions? Hearing none. Would you like to move this?
I'd like to move motion 1 for approval.
All right. Do we have a second? Ms. Cole, any last questions or comments? Hearing none. Mr. Whitford, please take roll.
Mr. Bogosian.
Yes.
Mrs. Cole.
Yes.
Mr. Healy.
Yes.
Mrs. Jones.
Yes.
Mr. Maison.
Yes.
Dr. Racine.
Yes.
Mr. Sprayberry.
Yes.
Dr. Lottie.
Yes.
Motion's carried.
Okay. We'll move on now to old business. Is there any old business? Ms. Jones?
I did attend the Washington School PTA meeting. It was Jessica Saxon's first meeting, and Mr. Hurley was there also, and there must have been about 40 people there. That room had
Wow.
very interested parents, and it went well. She did a nice job.
Nice.
Welcome her. to Washington School.
It's great. Thank you. Mr. Haley?
Yes, I attended the Kinder Center PTA first meeting, and Mr. Hurley was there. Did a great presentation. And this, same thing, it was more than usual and very enthusiastic. So I think the PTA tends to be a great job.
Great. Thank you. Mr. Sprayberry?
Some of everybody else, Mr. Early was there.
Early's everywhere.
At the Eaton School PTA, so it was good to be back there with, and I apologize for the current 7th grade class. Mr. Schweitzer. But it was good. It was a good meeting. It was good to be back in the class.
I keep hearing about that class.
Just look at the board.
And then I was at the high school PTA meeting. Mr. Hurley was there, Mr. Morano. And as we all know, usually the high school PTA meetings are a little light because of the parents are, in freshman, junior, sophomore, seniors. Senior class is off to a good start, so it was a good meeting.
Great. All right. Anything else? We will move on to legislative update. Ms. Jones, anything for us?
Yes. Interesting enough, it was suggested that we might want to read The Anxious Generation, which was a book that Mr. Hurley had. And I did read it. I am very grateful that I brought my kids up at a time when cell phones weren't even heard of. But also, the Parent Academy has a sheet out, and there are several sessions just on the anxious generation. So I'm going to try to see if I can. In conjunction with that, the bills that, I'm not going to go into any detail with them, but there are 4 bills, 1 in the Senate and 3 in the Assembly, that all have to do with establishing distraction features for school programs and devices to help them concentrate more. Another bill, 4855, concerns policies governing and the use of cell phones and social media platforms and how disturbing that is to kids. And these policies are now going to be, they're going to be voted on, and then hopefully the Department of Education will come out with even more stringent requirements than what we have. So ours are pretty good. There must be some districts that don't even have one.
Yeah, I don't want to interrupt you.
I'm done.
I was down at a meeting in Trenton where this was a big part of discussion. See, I'm not just at PTA meetings, I'm in Trenton too. I have mixed feelings about legislating certain things and coming up with policies, and then you have to enforce them, right? So what are you going to do? What are you going to do when that all of a sudden you make what I think are pretty, I think a lot of what's recommended in that book about cell phone use in schools, we already do. So, if we have to do something more now, is it a battle we're going to win? And if we don't win it, how do you handle it? I think there's a certain amount of letting districts figure it out. And I think we've had a pretty good approach. And we're not perfect, and there's always, if you have a rule, there's going to be somebody to figure out a way to get around it, right? But I think we do it pretty well. So this is a big topic with the Department of Education Board of Ed, with local Board of Eds, with legislators. It's a big topic, but you're looking at, and I don't want to go on and on about this because I can. I'll stop after this 2 sentences, then I want to say something about the Parent Academy. You're looking at cultural change, right? So those of us who are old enough to remember early 60s and cigarette smoking, and when the Surgeon General's report came out, and how gradually over time, right, Johnny Carson wasn't smoking on TV anymore. You couldn't have ads on TV, right? It didn't happen overnight. I mean, now it's kind of rare to see somebody smoking or to smell it, or to smoke indoors. I mean, that used to be a big thing, right, in school. Smoke. They vape now, but nobody smokes indoors anymore, I mean, you don't even think about it. Even if you're a smoker, you don't think about it. So that took 20, 30 years of change. You don't do cultural change overnight. And whether we like it or not, this has become part of our culture. So I think we have to take intelligent and very strategic responses. You can't have a nuclear reaction to this. Not going to work. And I'm glad we're in a place where we could tweak things a little bit and not really create a big upheaval, right? The Parent Academy, I'm very pleased with what is out there right now, and the people that are going to be involved in the presentation. We're going to be adding more things to it. We're talking about the new math program. We're talking about phonics. We're talking about executive functioning skills, which are 3 or 4 of our school's goals. We're talking about the use of phones and social media. We're trying to make those age appropriate. We're doing them in the morning when we'll get some audience because of the young parents. We're going to film them. Mr. Met's working with us, lending out his equipment and working with us so we can record them and then put them up on the web so people can see them. We have staff members who have volunteered to be a part of it, teachers and clinicians and SACs and administrators and the like. So I think it's going to be a really, really good thing. Ms. Coy oversees it. She coordinates with other people to get it going. So I'm really excited about that endeavor and about the reaction we've been getting to it. So the first one is next Friday at Washington, is on the Envision Math program. They're all going to be held either at Washington. Well, I shouldn't say all. There is a night one, but that's a different one through a PTA, but we're taking on the umbrella. They're all going to be at Washington, Lincoln, or Pierpont, because that's where you get parent drop-offs. And if other parents from other schools want to come, they're welcome to come. And then we'll record them there. Because we do these things at night, if nobody shows up, I hate to ask teachers and administrators, give them a night and there's an audience of 3, So we get a crowd in the morning and we record it, we'll put it out there. But I think it's a really great endeavor. And yeah, the book, you could agree with everything in the book, you could disagree with everything in the book, but it is a very thought-provoking and interesting book that has come forward. South Bergen superintendents have reached out to me, and they like our Parent Academy idea, and they're thinking about doing something a little bigger in South Bergen, maybe, like maybe in the spring, about some of these topics. And again, I don't want to sound like we're hawking this book. It's about the topic of, of the internet, of social media, of cell phones, of executive functioning. We can utilize some of the data he presents, but we're not promoting his book. We're promoting the topic that he raises. So I'm talking to some of the other superintendents about that as well. But you're right, it's out there, legislator, and I hope they just use good judgment of what they put forward. And Mr. Sprayberry, by your smirk, I guess we're thinking the same thing.
All right, thank you. At 8:34 p.m., we're going to open the meeting to the public, and then we are going to close the meeting to the public. We do not have a need for an executive session, which means we'll entertain a motion to adjourn. Mr. Bogosian, seconded by Mr. Sprayberry. We got the Jameses, all in favor? Aye. All right, we are adjourned.